Hello, everyone. I'm Lawrence Singleton, Dean of the Lubin School of Business, and I'd like to welcome you to the Dean's Roundtable. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome to the Roundtable Ira Robbins, the CEO of Valley National Bank. He's also a Lubin alum. We'll talk more about that in a second. So Ira Robbins is the Chief Executive Officer of Valley National Bank. He joined Valley in 1996 as part of the bank's Management Associates program and has grown along with the company. His 20-plus year career at Valley has seen him through several key positions where his invaluable contributions have helped shape the bank's growth and success. As CEO, he has led Valley into the future while keeping true to the company's roots as a local bank. In an ever-evolving digital and mobile world, Ira and his leadership team strive to create a stronger, faster, more efficient, and more responsive organization. His vision for success is building a purpose-driven organization that includes embracing innovation, being very customer-centric, promoting social responsibility, and empowering Valley's associates. Mr. Robbins is a certified public accountant and a member of the New Jersey Society of CPAs and the American Institute of CPAs. He serves on the board of the American Bankers Association, the New Jersey Bankers Association, the New York Bankers Association, and the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Finance and Economics from Susquehanna University and his MBA in Finance from Pace University. He's also a graduate of the Stonier Graduate School of Banking. Please welcome Ira Robbins to the Dean's Roundtable. Ira, welcome. If you could begin by telling us a little bit about your story.
Thank you, and I'm grateful to be here. I appreciate everyone for taking the time to spend with me a little bit this afternoon. And Dean Singleton and the entire group over at Pace, thank you for having me today. It's a real honor to be here, and I'm very happy. So thank you for that. I probably have a very unique sort of career and journey as to how I ended up at Valley, and maybe I'll start with that, and then sort of maybe walk through a little bit of what my progressions look like at Valley. So I was 21 years old when I graduated college, and I had no idea really what I wanted to do. I had a mother that lived in northern New Jersey with my dad, and she wanted me to be close to home. So starting in March of that senior year, she would send me newspaper clippings and classified ads of different jobs that were in the local geography of where we lived. I applied for one of them. Literally, she had circled a newspaper ad and said, "Hey, this is an interesting job." It was a management training program at Valley. I applied for the job, and lo and behold, 30 years later, I now sit in front of you today. So I was fortunate enough to be able to go into an organization that really was focused on career development, not knowing anyone within the organization. I know a lot today is focused on networking and connectivity, and I think for me, it was very fortunate to wind up in a wonderful place. So I started Valley going through a management training program. And at the time, the bank sort of separated itself into 21 different departments. And we spent about a year and a half rotating into each of those individual areas. And once again, I think when I graduated college, I was a finance and economics major. I knew I wanted to do something in business, but I really didn't have a lot of practical experience to understand exactly what that was. My uncle was a CFP and did some financial planning, and I thought maybe I would get a little bit of experience at a bank and maybe go in that specific trajectory. But I really found myself fortunate enough to work for an organization where there was a real culture that was focused on professional development. That was a growth organization at the time as well. When I started with Valley, the bank was about $4 billion in size and about 60 branches. Later on, I give you an update sort of where we are today. But it was a great organization, great people with a real focus on professional development. So my career at Valley started being placed in the accounting department after I finished the 21 different department rotation. And I was in the accounting department for a period of time. And it was encouraged by the CFO at the time that I needed to go get my MBA. And I spent a lot of time thinking about where I wanted to get my MBA. I was working in New Jersey, living in New Jersey, but I wanted a program that was going to be flexible enough for me to be able to work as well as be able to have some real challenges from an MBA perspective, from a course, from a curriculum perspective, and really even from a networking perspective. So the downtown campus at Pace really provided me with an opportunity to really fulfill what I was doing from a professional perspective and able to continue that while really getting what I thought to be a first-class education and connectivity to a lot of different people that I would have never met before. I think PACE was really helpful to me as well in that the professors that I met all had a lot of practical experience, where some of the other schools that I had looked at really were more focused just on academia and didn't really have that ability to really focus. So for me, it was a good blend where I had waited 5 to 6 years of actual work and then been going into my MBA, and it just really worked very well to begin to go into the PACE program. Finishing the PACE program was great. It really began to broaden some of the networking that I didn't necessarily have working for a New Jersey bank. So I continued my career with Valley in the accounting department, get into finance, treasury, budgeting, things we didn't never really even focused on, strategic planning. We were a growth organization, like I said, only $4 billion in size, about 400 to 500 employees. And getting into an organization that was beginning to be more mature provided natural growth opportunities for me. So I was able to begin to manage people when I was 24 years old. I was able to have presentations to a board of directors when I was 27 and 28 years old, and began to network and meet with sell-side analysts, buy-side analysts, investment bankers, all different types of sort of Wall Street type-esque firms and different backgrounds before I was 30 years old, which to me was a real explosion from an opportunity and being able to begin to network and really grow from an individual perspective. So I think that was really helpful. At the time, there was this view that if you're migrating into sort of a CFO track, CPA was important. So I ended up going back, getting my CPA, passed my test, and then I realized after I passed my test that I didn't even have enough accounting credits, even though I had my MBA at Pace. So I had to go back to school, even though I passed it, just to get the appropriate number of accounting credits, just to get my CPA. Nowadays, to be a CFO, I'd probably prefer not to be a CPA, honestly. So, the world's definitely changed a little bit from when I started. So then I'll sort of fast forward a little bit. So in 2017, the bank was going through a transition. At that time, we had grown from about $4 billion to $20 billion. We were not just in New Jersey at that point in time. We had migrated into New York in 2001, Long Island in 2012, Florida in 2014. So it was a very large type of organization that still had a community bank feel to it. At that time, the CEO had been the CEO for 35 years, and was beginning to think about what transition looked like. And the board was focused on scaling what we thought was a really good culture from a development perspective, a good culture in serving the community, understanding who all of our stakeholders were, and how we took what was a wonderful foundation from an organization and really began to sort of change it from a profile perspective to really begin to put a different growth level on it. So I've been CEO here since beginning of 2018 to now, so it's about 6 years. When I took over, the bank was $20 billion in size. Today, we're $61 billion in size, so we've tripled in the last 3 years. We had, when I took over, 3,850 employees, and today, 3,350 employees. Today, we're 3,721 employees. So we've tripled the size of the bank on about 350 employees. So I think we have really looked to the changing environment around us, and really began to bring in technology and innovation into our organization in a very different manner than what a lot of other banks have been able to, purely based on our ability to be agile and not have some of the bureaucracy that other companies have. The performance of the organization, we've grown our tangible book value, which is in essence sort of the value of every share, has grown 90% in the last 5 years. The industry average is around 53%. So we've effectively doubled the shareholder returns in the last 5-ish years while tripling the size of the organization. So we've done a lot of integrating into the bank in a very smart manner. M&A has been a significant focus of the bank. During my last 5 to 6 years as CEO, we've done 3 different mergers and acquisitions. In my tenure, though, since I started with the bank, I've probably been involved in 20 or so different acquisitions. Some have just been whole bank transactions. We've acquired banks from the FDIC back in the Great Financial Crisis in 2010. We were the only bank to acquire anything in New York City. We've done insurance companies, asset management companies, broker dealers, all different types of different entities we've been able to bring into the organization during the last 20-ish years or 30 years that I've been here. So for me, it's the ability to be constantly challenged and get to enter into new things, which I love. And I'm fortunate today to be able to sit in front of you. I think a success story coming from Lubin, where it's been a real value to me in helping shape who I am as a person. And I'm excited about sort of where the future of banking is, and hope to answer any questions you have, or any feedback on any specific topics if that helps.
Thank you. Great story. No question about that. I really appreciate you sharing it. Um, so now it's an opportunity for everyone in the audience to ask their questions of Mr. Robbins. You can raise your hand like this. You can raise your hand in the like that in Zoom, or you can put them in the chat where Molly will man the chat. So please take advantage of the opportunity to ask Mr. Robbins some questions. Let me begin by asking one myself. It seems to me a lot of students today don't ever expect to have an opportunity to stay in the same organization throughout their career like you have. What did Valley Bank do to entice you to stay, to keep you from looking at other opportunities? It sounds like they made it, really nice, a lot of opportunities to grow inside the bank, but were you ever tempted to leave?
I came close to leaving once, really close. And I think that was more from a professional development perspective. And I'll touch on that in a bit. But it was interesting to me. When I first started at Valley, I was making $25,000 a year was the interest salary that I made. At the time, I was offered $40,000, even $50,000 at other organizations. One was in Manhattan, a couple were in Philadelphia, but none of them had a training program. And for me, it was important to really focus on not so much what I was going to make at 22-ish years old, but what I was going to make and really be from a foundational perspective, grow and develop. And that was the focus for me from a career perspective. So I think it takes sort of two views and what that alignment looks like. I think it's really important for you to have a long-term perspective on what your career looks like. And I think that sets the right mindset when you go into an organization. And I think it's really important, critical, to find the right organization that's focused on what your growth is. And for me, it was an organization where somebody can know my name, and I wasn't just sort of filtered in with everybody else at a broader organization. I had worked and done some internships in Manhattan. I got offered a job in Manhattan for a very large investment bank at the time, and I just felt like it really didn't align with who I was from a personal perspective, from a values. In addition, I think it was just real challenging to to find the right organization. Once again, I think that sort of fosters growth. That's hard to really pierce out through an interview. And I think it was something that I was very fortunate for.
Next is Sophia.
You mentioned that at such a young age, like in your mid-20s, you were managing people, you were speaking to these big boards. Did you ever feel a sense of imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you overcome that?
It's a great question, right? I don't know. I think I've always been a confident individual and felt like I belonged. I think it's probably more of the other way around, is I think as many times you walk into a situation and you feel as if you know more than the person that's sitting across from you. And when you focus on titles, you focus on salaries, sometimes that happens. The inverse of that is the experience that comes with it and maybe what you don't necessarily know. So I think I've always been a very humble person in who I am, very respectful of all those that are around me. So I think walking into a situation, being confident, but always being empathetic to the person that was sitting on the other side of the table, I think were important character traits that helped me. But to your point, I remember when they first moved the payroll department to me. Like I said, I was in my early 20s. The gentleman that ran the payroll department was 10 to 15 years older than me. And we walked in, we've had the first conversation about his salary and where he was. And I gave him a decent salary increase at the point in time. And he was furious with me that he didn't get a title promotion. And I said to him, he had more in salary than what you were looking at before, but to him it was all title. That's all he cared about. And I think that was an early lesson for me in really understanding the person that was sitting across from you and what was important to him or her. and then helping shape what that conversation looked like. And not everyone has the same desires, aspirations, goals that I have. And having the ability to sort of take a step back and really try to understand it from someone else's perspective was important. And that's happened to me. Look, for whatever reason, maybe I'm not the youngest now, but I was the youngest bank CEO in the country for a very long time. So when I would go meet with the Federal Reserve Bank, any different type of regulator, anyone in Washington, there was always this perspective, everyone else has gray hair, I'm losing my hair and it's becoming gray. But when I first started, I didn't have any of that. So I don't know if it's imposter syndrome, but always a question that I was always viewed as being different, or maybe was there, why am I here? Sure.
Let me ask another while others are putting theirs in the chat. Again, take advantage of Mr. Robbins to ask him questions. You talked about how you grew the size of the bank. I think you said double the size of the bank, basically, but grew the number of employees by a much smaller amount. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how you did that, technology and so on? Seems like many organizations are trying to get more efficient and do more with less.
And I think that is, I think sort of a focus on sort of where the bank was headed. I think it's hard being a leader. You can't be everyone's best friend. And I think in an organization, especially in a community bank that grows up, or in any type of smaller organization where you build a strong bonds of connectivity to those that are around you, really objectively assessing performance, objectively assessing sort of what's capable in each individual world sometimes becomes a challenge. And I think for a period of time, we just accepted mediocrity at Valley. And when you do that to make other people feel comfortable or happy and not have real conversations with people about what their performance looks like, you're only doing a disservice to the real up and comers within the organization. So our first year, when I became CEO, we terminated 600 people in the bank. And I keep in mind, this was an organization that I grew up in. I fired many of the people that I had worked for, that were my mentors. But I felt from a broader perspective, in order to give the organization the right level of accountability and sort of performance, and to attract the right talent to come into the organization, we had to surround ourselves with the right people. So I think making difficult decisions was something that was very important at the time. So that, coupled with understanding, sort of what the role of technology could really play inside an organization. The average salary at the bank was around $44,000 in 2017, 2018, when I took over. Today, the average salary is $144,000 before everything else. So, I think it's one, investing in the right people, and then letting those people and empowering them to be in an organization where they can get something done. So when I look around the executive table, when I look around all the people that sit and make decisions in our organization, most of them are younger than me today. And I think that's a function of trust. It's a function of providing the right environment for someone to succeed. So, headcount isn't just, hey, we have a new technology that we can sort checks differently, or we can do a credit analyst differently. Technology in itself doesn't do anything. If you don't have the right people embedded to sort of bring that technology into the organization, none of it matters. And I think we were able to strike the right balance in investing in technologies as well as investing in people. But without the two of them together, you never get the economies of scale or efficiencies that we needed.
So
Renee, go ahead.
Hello. Like, you have initially started as a entry-level associate, and then you have developed yourself into a CEO. What sort of characteristic changes have you seen in your personality? Like, from a leadership perspective, I would like to know, like, how was the character development happening? How did you deal with your seniors? Every time you get a promotion, there'll be people who are jealous of you. How did you deal with all of that?
I think once again, I think I was very fortunate to surround myself in the right organization. I had aspirations and drive to really move up the ladder quickly. Look, if I would have worked for a Goldman right off the bat, I would have been much more concerned about the people around me and what their individual objectives were. I think I came into an organization that really supported my growth, which I think is something that when you look at where you're going to ultimately end up from a job perspective, I mean, those are the right types of questions that you need to ask. You know, how they're really promoting what you're doing, not just from a title perspective or from an individual job perspective, but when you think about their overall professional development. So I think it was very fortunate to work in an organization where most people, I don't think, were so, you know, jealous and or critical as to what my progression looked like within the organization. Like I think I've grown a lot even in the last 5-ish years. You know, you walk into any position and think that you know everything, right? You walk into your school and to a class and say, I know everything, and what else do you know? I think the humble individual knows what they don't know, right? And sort of limits them sort of building up inside some of that ego. So once again, I think I've been balanced in how I come into every position. I treat everyone as if they're a human being, that their role is important, their job's important. I try to learn from every single one of them. And I would honestly say I don't think I really had that experience here in the last 10 to 15 years where someone's been, oh my gosh, Ira, you're so young. Why are you in this job? You don't know what you're doing. Or, you know, I want your job. And I think it's who you surround yourself with. I mean, we have many people in our organization that have come to work for us to make 10 to 30% less than what they were making at a large organization in New York City. But they get to get rid of the bureaucracy. They get to work in a collaborative environment, and they get to really see where they leave their thumbprint on something. And I say this a lot, right? If a company can't show you where you can leave your thumbprint on the company, then it's probably the wrong company for you. In my own personal opinion, that's sort of what you want to do and grow in your career. So we've been able to attract unbelievable talent to come into our organization because we don't have that general stereotypical view of some of what you see and hear in New York City. And keep in mind, we're a large bank. I mean, we are the 25th largest bank in the country. I mean, we deal with, you know, massive capital issuances. We deal with multi-billionaires every single day, right? So we have a client list. We have constituents that are just really, it's just a different culture. Thank you for the question.
Myojung, I think you had one.
Yeah, hi, my name is Myojung Cho. I'm a faculty at the accounting department. I guess I joined PACE after you left. I was wondering, I was looking at your bank's website, and the prominent portion of the website is how the Valley has committed to giving back to the community. And I really like to see that. I think that I'm seeing it. And I was wondering, what was your motivation to put it prominently as your major commitment? And it looks like most of the activities that I saw are, I could be wrong, but around the New Jersey area. I was wondering if you have, or if you have any intention to expand it to New York City, because I'm the faculty advisor of Better Fasai. We're always looking for some community service events with some big companies like Valley. So if you have any insights on that, I'd love to hear that.
So we got to give you some more info on who we're supporting in New York, but we do a bunch in New York, Long Island, Florida, and Alabama, all over. So look, I think you go back to, you know, one of the struggles, I think, in any career. And once again, I started, to be clear, not knowing exactly what I wanted to necessarily do. And I ended up in banking, ended up in finance, and my career began to grow. And as I got to a certain point in my career, I began to question what I was doing and the impact that I was having. You know, I went to college initially as a history major with an expectation I'd be a teacher and be able to have an impact on those that are around me. And then I was with Valley and wondering, what is the impact that I'm having? And I I remember laying awake one night, couldn't sleep, and I was starting to think through what is Valley, and banks are nothing more than giant hedge funds, right? We take 10% of our capital, 10% of our people, and lever it out 10x, right? It's a huge hedge fund, is what we are. And I started to really think to myself, if I wanted to have an impact on something, I can either do it directly and feel good about it. I can go and hand out food. I can go and do something from an environmental perspective or clean a beach, or I can work for a bank and I can give a loan to a recycling company and have 10x the impact on society than me doing something independently. And I'll further that by saying I love this country, but I'm very skeptical sort of what we spend our money on from a country perspective, and do we always get the right impact for what we spend? And I think it shouldn't always be the government's responsibility to fix things, but as corporations and as individuals, it should be our responsibility to make sure that we're getting the outcomes that we're looking for. So it's very important for me, for Valley, to make sure that we're giving back and contributing back to society. We were, PPP came around, which was the banks giving out money from a government program for COVID. Many of the banks, the large banks, didn't even do it for any of the small businesses, right? And we gave a loan out, a $78 loan to a dentist, right? And he probably didn't even need it, but for him, it was the ability to get something from his government that he felt that he deserved, and that gave him an internal feeling that he was really proud of. To me, that's why banks of all sizes are really important and really critical. And we allocated a third of our loans that we did from PPP perspective went to minority and women owned businesses. That was deliberate as to how we sort of thought about what our business is. I don't necessarily think that you can run, a business just to do good. There has to be some component of profitability in it, obviously. But I think that they necessarily don't have to be separate. You can sort of intertwine them together. We get a lot of talk about ESG within the Valley world. And within the banking space, the SEC just came out and put new guidance as to sort of how we need to report on our environmental impact and those of our clients. And the challenge with me with ESG is it becomes very political. You have one side that's focused on what is the real benefit here? Is this really what a company should be doing? And another side that says this is all that a company should be doing. And then it gets too political, focused on what each of those individual ES or G terms mean. And I think it's very simple. If you look at the core component of what ESG is supposed to stand for, it's really an opportunity, an equal opportunity for everyone, right? When it comes to no matter what your social class looks like, when you think about from an environmental perspective, to really do your part to make sure that you have the foundation, this earth that we're here for. And then what does that governance structure surround it and look? And we try to take ESG at our bank and take the political crap out of it and say, is this who you want to be from an organization perspective? And is this what's important to us? And the answer is yes. We were the first public company our size to issue an ESG bond. Not because it was the right thing to do, but because it was important to us from a culture perspective of who we brought into the organization, right? It was important for me to say, just like you see on our website, who's going to be successful at Valley? And the person that doesn't give a crap about it is not going to be successful here. And it's someone that I really want. So how we promote ourselves and some of the things we do aren't necessarily just from an economic impact, but it's really from a culture impact to who we bring into the organization. So that's why it's prominent on your website to answer it. That's why we're out and do a bunch of things within the community to make sure that we attract the right people to come to the organization. We retain the right people that sit within the organization. And honestly, it makes me feel good that we're doing something outside of just making money for a shareholder.
Okay, we have a question from Isabella in the chat. Isabella is a finance major, and she wanted to ask if you could share your thoughts on whether your background in finance and economics, along with your MBA from PACE, adequately prepared you for a high-level management position. Also, what do you consider to be the most valuable skills you acquired during both your undergraduate and graduate education?
So the answer is yes. I was definitely put in a good position to succeed, I think. And I remember I went to PACE a little bit later in my career, and I think it was the right time to go to PACE. I think I would have done a disservice to myself if I had gone right after school, to be honest with you. I think you learn much more from an MBA. And I don't know if this is what PACE promotes, but I think overall, I think getting a little bit of work experience first, I think is really valuable in my own individual career. But I think, you know, finance and accounting are wonderful foundations to really understand what goes on and connect the dots. I think I find too many people that have an individual major that are focused on something from a real silo perspective, and the ability to work in any company is to connect when you do something here, what the impact is to something else across an organization. We have, you know, bridges of themes that sit within the bank here, right? And that's from a cultural perspective to make people understand that we're connectors of people. But I think it's the same thing from a job perspective. When you do something, it has an impact on something else. And finance, I think, helps you understand if you're looking at something from a cash flow statement, right? Well, the impact of changing investments in the cash flow statement has an impact on the P&L, which has an impact on the balance sheet, which has an impact on someone's economic return when it comes to something else. So, Isabella, I would say when you focus on finance, yes, it's great, but when you focus on the connectivity and how everything's interrelated and that mindset and that concept of how it's related to everything else, I think becomes really critical to understand the foundations. I would say, though, what's made me successful from a leadership perspective is really a care about people, and understanding. And I want to say from a psychology perspective, I've never taken a psychology course, but I read a lot. And I think understanding human behavior, what drives people, is really important. And as much as I think my foundation in business has been helpful, I would gather it's probably more to do with some of the listening I do and or trying to really understand what really inspires and motivates people, and then making sure that I have a message that's very succinct and focused on that as well. Once again, I think for PACE, the ability to go after school and the ability to network with people that weren't just what I had networked with at Valley was really helpful to me in understanding people, understanding dynamics. I would say the courses were good, but I'm not sure I remember, you know, a specific theory or something that was in any of the books. It's the concepts, right? That you really begin to learn. And I think what PACE emphasized for me that maybe my undergrad sort of taught me is the concepts are more important than the actual fraction or function, right? As to what you're really learning. So the concepts of an economic theory, maybe not the economic theory itself, but how the things are related were important. And PACE really brought that to life for me, actually. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Well, are there any particular courses you would encourage the students on the call today to take, to focus on if they want to have a career like yours in banking?
So this is going to sound silly, but I would say accounting is the first one, I think, because I think it just provides an unbelievable foundation to understand the connectivity of everything. When I was in college, I did the VITA program, which was preparing tax returns. And just think even that for other people, I think is important. But understanding how, to me, if I had interest income here, you know, what that did to me on the deduction here, or what happened on my Schedule A and what they was able to do. I think it's the connectivity with that and how everything's related, I think is really important. So I think accounting is a wonderful foundation, even if you don't stay in accounting, but I think it's the best foundation to go into in any business career. And I think psychology is, you know, as weird as it sounds, I think, you know, the challenge with the world today isn't so much of understanding, once again, a model or understanding a problem. It's the ability to communicate and to really collaborate and get something done. And that doesn't happen without understanding human behavior.
Next, we have Trista, and I saw Almina raise your hand, so you can go afterwards.
Okay, so thank you for your training. And I'm Trista Q. I'm from China. It's my first time to attend this activity. I think it's very interesting. And listening to your story, I feel like I was immersing your story. Before starting my MBA, I was developing my clients, like starting with the hedge funds, then PE, and then individual clients. but all of my work have been in China. So I would like to ask, as an international bank, what do you think are the biggest difference between the Chinese markets and the American financial markets? Also, do you have, can you give me some advice? Because in the future, I want to work in here. So maybe I will have developing new clients here. So maybe you can give me some advice to how to developing the American markets. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for the question. It's great. Like, I think there are definitely some differences, right? And it's the cultural differences that happen
Yeah.
between each individual country. And I think, you know, in my experience here, understanding behaviors and people in the United States are really important. You know, we definitely deal with other international clients here. And everyone has a different perspective on what a client relationship should look like. So if that was your question with regard to, you know, sort of what the clients are, I would say, you know, definitely spending time understanding the cultural behaviors that really exist within the United States. Your ability to connect with your fellow associates and work with them is critical in the United States and moving up within a career. You may be the smartest individual and have the best models and whatever else you're running within your own individual space, but if you're siloed in your thinking and just focused on your output on an individual basis, I would say you're probably not going to be successful in the United States. Now, if that's all you want to do, then you'll be successful in that specific career, and that's fine. But if it's to grow, to work with people and to manage at some point, you know, I would say get out of the model and spend more time conversing with other people and finding out what's really important to them and how you really begin to work together and understanding their problem and how you find a solution for that. Honestly, I don't know enough about the Chinese market to know if that really exists there or not. So I'm sorry for that.
It's okay. Thank you so much. I feel more confident now.
Thank you. Well, the fact you asked the question, I think, is first of all great, right? So that
Okay.
shows you are already acclimated to the United States. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Definitely. Thank you.
Next, there was Almina.
Hi, I'm Almina. Given your high position, what do you think is like the hardest decisions you have to make? And also, how do you deal with the pressure of like this all depends on me kinda and like my voice? And also, do you have any suggestions on books that you've read? Maybe like one or two top ones?
Yeah, so I'll give you the books at the end, and I'm weird when it comes to book because I keep notes on every single book that I read, so I can go back and look at them later, which is like weird. I try to now, we do monthly town halls here with our associates, with everyone comes and we have like just a Q&A session after some presentations as to what we're focused on, but they're very casual. And I got a question the other day about, I guess, what it's like to be a CEO. And I use this analogy. So I have four boys, 14, 12, 10, and 6 years old. And I took my kids the other day to a candy store and I gave them each $100 bill. And I gave them a basket and I said, go in the candy store and buy whatever you want. And they ran in and literally they were like crazies, pulling candy from every single shelf and putting it into these baskets. Then they came back to me after they were done and they said, this is what they want. And I took the baskets back from them and I gave them each a $5 bill. And I said, okay, now go buy the candy that you want. And they spent 5 to 10 minutes walking around the store, deciding which piece they wanted to get because they only had $5, when their behavior the time before was so different because they had $100. And I would say that's analogous to me as a CEO. I don't have $100, I only have $5. How I spend that $5 in the organization becomes really, really important. When you have everybody in every division, in every function, in every world wanting the $5, right? So the resource allocation is all that I do, honestly. And it's not just a focus on what is the direct ROI that we get that says we will make $10 for this $5 investment. That's the direct reaction to it. But from an indirect perspective, if we spend money putting an ESG bond together, will I be able to attract better talent that comes into the organization that will have an outsized impact 2, 3, 4 years down the road? I think it's trying to think through resource allocation. I think are very hard decisions within the organization. And when you're a CEO, you live in a world where you have more information than anyone else. You see everything, every single piece to it. And I don't want to bring this into religion, but everyone else has what I would call a God effect, right? Where they believe that their view is an entire view of the situation, when in reality, your view is only a function of individual variables and individual parts. So their decisions that they're making don't necessarily have all the information associated with it, which sometimes lead to bad decisions. As a CEO, I have a little bit more information, so I can make it maybe a different decision. But those different decisions, because I have more information, sometimes are viewed negatively by others in the organization. And I think that becomes more of a challenge. And sometimes you can't share all the information with everyone else. They just have to really trust you as to why you made that individual decision. So we make decisions here all the time, and all the time, not all the time, a lot of times people are not happy with the decisions that I make. But I think in the end, I have the right purpose as to why I think I run the organization, for what I run it for what my outcomes are. And I'm confident in the decisions that I make, but I don't always make everyone happy. And books. Let's see. So I read a book called Legacy recently, which is about the New England, not New England, the New Zealand rugby team. So totally nothing related to business, but it's all about business. It's all about rituals and about leadership. Actually, but leadership from a very different area. So I thought that was a good book. I read The Book of Joy, which was, I thought, a great book for me. And it's with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. I thought it was a really good book. Stephen Covey wrote a book called The Speed of Trust, which is another one that I read recently, which I thought was a great book. He equates working in a corporation to having a trust tax. And it's somewhere between 10 to 20% that he aligns. And basically says, by you not trusting your coworkers, by you not being collaborative, open, and honest, you basically added 20% of friction to every single process, every single procedure that sits within an organization. He walks through how you build trust within an organization that eliminates a lot of that. So I think those were a couple good books. I don't know, is that enough, or do you want me to think of some more?
Yeah, actually, that last one really intrigued me, the 20% adding friction. So I wrote them all down. Thank you so much for your insight and your input.
Definitely.
What is your typical day like? You're a busy executive. You got lots of meetings, a lot of people wanting your time. When does it start? When does it end? And what do you do in between?
It depends. So I have, like I said, I have 4 kids. I try to balance my kids as much as I can. So a couple of days a week, I take my kids to school. And I spend the morning with them making them breakfast. But most of the time, if I'm doing that day, I'm up at early, 4:30, 5-ish at the latest, and I'll start working then to try to get things done, or to just read a little bit beforehand. And then a lot of times I'm entertaining or doing something with clients or networking in the evenings, and I'm out late. So it's interesting. I used to have this perspective upon life. Whenever you see a pie, right, and you take an apple pie and you slice it up into different pieces, right? So you have, let's call it 5 different pieces that sit within the apple pie. And I used to have this perspective on life that you could take a slice of the apple pie and have that be how much time you allocate to yourself from a personal perspective. A second slice that says how much you allocate from a professional perspective. Then the third that says how much you allocate to your family. And then sort of you walk through those individual slices. And it's interesting in life, the slices change, right? So you're focused on what each of you are doing today. And I imagine you have a lot for your personal life, a lot for your education, maybe not so much for your family because you're not with them every single day. Now that maybe changed a lot from when you were younger. Then when you get older, you have kids or you do something else, maybe the family grows. And I used to have this perspective in life that a pie is a dynamic pie. So at different stages of your life, different professions where you're at, the pies would always change. And ultimately, by the time you got old and gray and died, it was your pie, but you got to sort of pick each individual slice and aggregate them together. And I ended up finding that it doesn't work because there's different stages in each of your life that the pie needs to really blend. So the blueberry pie needs to end up merging with the apple pie. So like to me, I bring my kids to work a lot. The two older ones play hockey. And I bring them here when they're going to practices or something. And I find unless I can intertwine my personal and my professional life, I feel like I'm always shortcoming when it comes to something else. So I try to really blend as much as I can together. And I'm real focused on that within the organization on our town halls. I talk a lot about my kids on our town halls, a lot about different stories. And I relate stories to my kids to behaviors that I want within the organization. But the real reason I talk about my kids is because I want all of our associates to understand that family is important. And it's not just lip service coming from me that you need to prioritize your family, but then your manager is telling you to work till 10 o'clock at night. I tell stories about how I skip, coming to work in the morning because I want to go to my kid's Shabbat service at his religious school or I want to do something else. So I tell stories about that to change behavior and to make sure everyone has things prioritized within the organization. Once again, about what's important to me. So a typical day doesn't exist for me at all. It just is a lot of time, but I think I try to balance it around from a priority perspective, what's really important to me.
Excellent. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Robbins?
I have like more so of a personal question. I feel like when it comes to success, your mindset and like your perspective on both yourself and life contributes a lot to it. And I think that is also why you're very successful, like given the way you've been talking this past hour. And I'm curious, like, is your mindset and like your confidence in yourself and your decisions, is it stemming from like, did you learn it like through like self-help like books, or like did you just kind of like naturally just have like those traits, if that makes sense? Like,
It's
is this like a
interesting.
natural trait of yours?
It's a good. I was I was at an interview last week. I was talking about this, and we're talking about wellness, right? And people's perspective on sort of how you have wellness that sits within your professional and business career. And everyone looks at wellness and says, did I go to the gym that day? Did I eat healthy that day? And everyone forgets about the mind, right? And to me, wellness isn't so much about how much you've exercised, but what's your positive mindset that you set on something. And I think I have a very positive mindset on everything that happens. And it goes back to this, and I hate to say it again, but it goes back to this God phenomenon that I believe in. Like, I don't believe I know everything, right? And there's a greater purpose as to why certain things happen. And I believe that everything happens for a good reason, even the worst things that happen in life, and there'll be a positive thing that comes out of it. I thought COVID obviously was horrible. I mean, you read through what happened to so many people in this country, and you can get hung up on the negative that comes with it. But I really feel from an organization perspective, our culture, our ability to contribute grew dramatically because of COVID. And there's always a slither of some positive that happens. And I believe that if we focus on just purely, oh, woe is me, what happened from a negative perspective, you can complain about anything that you want. No one's going to want to listen to you in the end, and you'll be a negative person. But if you look at life and take every little thing that happens and try to put a positive spin on it, I think one, you connect so much better with other people. You're healthier in how you view sort of your being, and you don't get some of the stress levels, right, that everyone else gets because you're hung up on this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. So I do spend a lot of time reading different types of books. Like I said, the Book of Joy isn't necessarily a business book, right? But I think, I've always loved Desmond Tutu, and I just think, looking at leaders from different areas that I can sort of then bring it back to how I sort of run Valley, I think is really important, and not just staying in, self-help books for business. I don't think make any sense. I think we all have live broader lives than what that is. And I would recommend spending as much time on your mental aptitude and how you look at things. And that's what's going to make you successful in life. Not that I'm saying don't go to the gym if that's what you need, but make sure you spend as much time focusing on up here as you are the rest of your body, though.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You mentioned about accounting and psychology classes. In a lot of our programs at Lubin, we build analytics into a lot of the programs. They can, the more you can understand data and use it. How big of a role does that play at your bank and you personally and how you run it? How much do you use data and what kind of tools do you use to get the data that you need?
So my head is math, to be honest with you. Everything is an equation for me. And I love math because I think you can be as creative as possible in solving a problem using math, honestly. So analytics are definitely here as to sort of how I grew up in my career and thinking about numbers and how they drive different behaviors and outcomes. So I spent a lot of time on that. We started when I first took over in 2017, 2018, really beginning to put in a data lake within the organization, how we have quants, data scientists that work here that try to begin to assess all this data. We have more data in this place. We use Snowflake now, everything as to sort of what you can look at from a data perspective. And no one uses it to the degree that I want them to. And it goes back to the question that was earlier is, unless you bring the right people into the organization, the right technology is not going to make the difference. And it's not just people that understand technology, it's people that understand how to connect with the business line to have it see as valuable to them. And the important leadership. I'm sitting here to screen in my office and to really begin to demonstrate the importance of data. When you're not on the screen, there's a dashboard that sits there that's just on analytics about the performance of the bank, right? It gets updated frequently. And to me, it's beginning to demonstrate more of a message. Whether the information is on there is something I'm using daily or not, it doesn't matter. It's what does it imply within the organization as to how important data is. We have a huge data and analytics department. I think it's 27 people that sit within the organization, purely focused on taking all this data we have and how does it change behaviors within the organization. So it is a big focus for us. I think it's great for us to have that type of information and to not be caught up like a JPM in the bureaucracy where you can't get to any of the information or the governance has to sit with that. It's crazy. Literally, I can pull up on my phone anything about any client that I want from a behavior, activity, transaction perspective, right here. And not everyone has all that information. So you can be a smaller company and have amazing technology when it's something that you're focused on. And I think it just goes back to when each of you decide what you want to do with your career, finding a place that sort of fits with what your personality is, I think becomes really important. And if you just want to show up for work every single day and collect your paycheck, then maybe some of the larger companies make sense for you. If you really have a curiosity, which I think is important about something, then I think finding the right company for you, whether it be a smaller or mid-sized company, becomes that much more important for you. If there's a curiosity in your head that wants to learn, then I think making sure that's the right type of a company. Yeah, I will say, Dean Singleton, we do have an internship program here. We've been named year after year one of the top 100 internships in the entire country. So if any of you have any interest and want an internship, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an email, and I'll definitely put you in touch with the group here that runs it. But we have everything from quant people that are focused on running models within the organization to commercial bankers, to compliance people, to people working in treasury, capital markets, a huge import-export desk. We do a lot of FX swaps and all sorts of other things. So as challenging as you want from a finance perspective to human resources and hiring, right, to operations, which is to marketing. So a litany of different backgrounds, but please, if any of you have any interest, we would love to be able to spend some time with you.
There's a lot of smiles already. That's wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Robbins? Well, I can't thank you enough for spending an hour with us today. It's very, very interesting. You have a wonderful career, and really, you're a great example of someone who went to school at Pace University in the Lubin School of Business. A great, great success story. So I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate the students being here. We have a gift to give you. Unfortunately, I can't hand it to you over the Zoom camera, so we'll send it to you. You should have it in a few days. Thank you for being here, and thank everybody for attending the Dean's Roundtable. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.